Hello folks, I'm Mike Vonbeardingham and this is my 5 tips for being a dep musician. For those of you who aren't au fait with the term dep musician, it's another word for stand-in musician. Now me and most of the musicians I know have all been stand-in musicians for other bands at some point. Some people I know do it pretty much as a full-time band job. They don't have their own band, they go around other bands, standing in, filling in for different groups as and when it's needed. Whether it's illness in the band, whether it's a last minute gig that a member can't do, family emergency, or just a gig where people have got together. Any reason you might need a stand-in musician. Now, these 5 tips are based off not only my own experience of being a dep musician, but also of having deps in my band to fill in spaces where needs be. So hopefully they are going to be of some help and some validity. Tip number 1, learning the set. Seems like an obvious one to start with, but there are many different facets to this which can make your learning process easier, more accurate, and not leave you stumped when it actually comes to doing your live performance. So first thing you want to do when you're doing a dep show, get a copy of the set they want to play. Get this as early as you can, because the last thing you want to be doing is being asked to do a stand-in show and it gets to a couple of days before and they still haven't sent you the set list. So you're going to be buggered if that's the case. So get the set list ASAP. If they're a good band, they'll probably ask you what songs you know to make your life easier. So if they're a band with a really good repertoire, they might send you over their song list and say, this is all the songs we've got, so pick ones that you're comfortable with. If that's the case, brilliant, crack on. But in some cases, some bands don't have a large repertoire, so you're going to have to be learning the songs that they play. So there's a couple of important factors in this. When a band says, and when you ask them, do you play the songs like the original? Do not believe it for a second. The amount of bands that I have stood in for who claim to play like the original, and you get there and they've added sections in, they've taken sections out, they do special endings. It will happen, believe you me. So the best thing you can do is try and get a live copy of the band's performance. So either a live recording, some video, any audio that they've taken at gigs, so you can hear exactly how the band play that song. Because a lot of the time, these bands will have been playing these songs that way for so long, they consider that the norm, which really isn't going to help you when you turn up and you find that they do an extra chorus or an extra verse or something along those lines. So it really doesn't help the situation. Not only that, you want to make sure that you are in the correct tunings for whatever the band are playing. Now, some bands play in E flat, some bands play in E standard. Some bands will learn songs not in the tunings they were in the original. Now, there's certain bands, for example, like Guns N' Roses and The Killers, who played their songs in E flat tuning. Now, I know some bands who then play in standard tuning but play in E flat positions, so it puts the whole natural place of where you would play the song completely out for guitar and bass. So all these kind of things are really essential for you as a stand-in musician to know before you go into the lion's den. Because as I say, if you get there and you find that they've learned songs in different keys, or they shift them up, shift them down, or they're playing in like flat tuning, all these kind of things, you need to know all this stuff from the start. So that is my tip 1 when learning the set. Get all the information you possibly can so that there are no nasty surprises on the night. Tip 2, knowing your place in the band. This is quite a tricky and probably a lengthy subject, so I do apologise if I go on a touch. When you step into a band environment, you have to know what your role is going to be as that dep musician. Now, you might be if you're a frontman, for example, they might want you as a frontman to be really upfront, engaging with the audience, lots of banter, all that kind of thing. As a bass player, you may, for example, be more set towards the back. They may not want you to be up front, head banging and giving it all that kind of thing. Same with a guitarist. Are you a rhythm guitarist? Are you supposed to take a leading role? Are you supposed to be, say, set back in the band dynamic? All of these things you sort of need to know to do a good dep job. And the thing is with some bands, for example, I've known this if they've, say I'm standing in for a frontman, a singer, and that singer may not be overly used to engaging with the audience. The fact that you as a singer who likes to engage with the audience might bring something extra to the band and make the other band members enjoy the situation more. I've had that several times where I've stood in, say, for singers who aren't quite as confident in front of a microphone as I am. And therefore, with my engagement with the audience, it's sort of made the band members laugh and they've really enjoyed the show. But you can't take that for granted. So you have to try and assess what your role will be in that band, because you don't want to come in and make the dep role all about you, because you might just piss everybody off. So it's very important, as I say, to, if you can, again, get videos of the band beforehand, maybe watch some online stuff, maybe go and see them at a show to try and see the kind of dynamic of what is going on in that band, so that you can do what you can to slot seamlessly in and make yourself seem more of the band rather than an actual dep player. One important thing to note is when you're standing in for a band or a band member, what kind of band they are. Are they a band who like to jam stuff? Do they always stick to the same structures? So are they going to be a band who will like go, right, you take a solo now, and you're like, oh, okay, right, I've got to throw in a solo in here. Is there going to be a lot of eye contact between people? Or is it, no, we come in, we play the songs exact, and we don't want you spaffing and wanking all over everything? Again, a very important point of knowing where you sit in the band dynamic. So you don't want to come in being a complete showboater and, yes, I'm fucking amazing, woo, and all the rest of the band members are just looking at you like you're an absolute wanker. That's not going to get you called back. But then, say, there might be a dynamic in where they want you to be like that, where they need a showboaty guitarist or a showboaty singer. You know, this is the great thing about checking out a band beforehand, so you can see exactly how the band works and what your role is going to be. Tip 3, don't get involved with band politics. When you come in, again, to that band dynamic, you've got to remember that you're walking into an almost family environment. And chances are probably a dysfunctional family at some point. There's going to be members who've got various gripes against each other. You may walk into a band that really, really don't like each other. I've experienced this. I know a lot of my friends have experienced this. Or a band who one person in particular is a complete diva and arsehole, and the rest of the band are sitting there grumbling about this person behind their back. Don't take any part in it. You're there to do a job. Be as amiable and as amicable as you can be without getting involved in all the playground politics. It's not going to do you any good. And the fact that you just let them get on with it and don't take part means that you're not going to piss anybody off. And then hopefully, if you still want to do another gig with them, if it's that much of a ball ache, they will ask you back. Tip 4. Your sound and your own monitoring in a dep environment. One of the worst things for being a dep, especially a singer, is if you turn up and you don't know what equipment the band have got, what desks they've got, whether they've got enough auxiliary outputs for you to run in-ear monitors, if that's what you use. So the best thing you can do is make sure that you provide your own monitoring, your own setup in a way that isn't going to affect how their band run their sound. For example, I take a small mixing desk and I'll mic up a guitar, I will run my in-ears off of my mixing desk, and I also use a vocal pedal, which means I can give them my vocal out without having to take anything from their desk. I can give them a clean vocal in which they can do whatever they want with and get whatever sound they want. And then I can do whatever I want with my extra lines out going to my mixing desk. That way, I'm not impeding on anything they do, and it just makes life easier for everybody. And a lot of the time they'll go, we can give you this, we can give you these lines out, we can do your monitoring for you. If you know how you like your monitoring and you know the sound you like, you're best off doing it yourself. Otherwise, you don't want to be sort of playing away and then sort of, can you tweak this, can you tweak that for me? You'll just seem like a little bit of a pretentious princess if you keep like, no, that's a bit loud, that's a bit quiet, can you tweak that? If you can do it all yourself, you remove any hassle that you bring to the band as a dep musician, any extra hassle, and you don't impede in how they like to perform and do their sound. Tip 5, having the right equipment for the venue. You can imagine the situation where a musician turns up bringing a massive great rig, maybe it's 4 cabs, 2 heads, or drummer turns up with like a massive 50-piece kit and hasn't been told that the venue is a tiny little pub where you're in the corner next to the toilets. This happens and you're stuffed. Again, we need to gather all the information about the band we're playing in and where we are playing. So if they're a really broken down band who only like to have a few pieces, you're going to want to take a small scale setup. If they're a rock band who like going really over the top, you might be allowed to bring your extra amps and extra drums and whatever it is you want to bring. But it's all venue dependent. So it's a good idea, for example, if you find that the band are playing at a venue, ask them about the size of it. Have I got room for a big rig? What sort of equipment are you bringing? And then tailor it to suit the venue. Which also comes into play of having decent equipment and equipment that you can vary for a show. So as long as you've got an amp that isn't too big, you may be able to add different bits to it, extra cabs, etc. if you want for a bigger sound, for a bigger venue. And the same with the drum kit. If you've got a drum kit that you love playing that's huge, you're probably going to need one that's scaled down as well for playing venues where you're not going to have the space. So again, being prepared when being a depth musician is the most important thing that you can do and be. So that is my final tip, tip 5, the right equipment for the right venue. So that is my 5 tips for being a depth musician in a covers band. Now, there's multitudes of other tips that I could have given, but these 5 are what I consider the most important. Now, I will say one other thing about being a depth musician. The best depth musicians that we have ever had are the ones that you forget are depth musicians. They just come into your band, they've done their homework, they turn up on time, they have eye contact when playing in the songs, they're listening to what's going on, and they get the feel of the band. And you start forgetting that they're even there. You'll see that the band will just relax around them, because there is nothing worse than when you have a depth musician who might be screwing up, playing things wrong, and the rest of the band are just watching in fear of what's going to happen next. So the performance is just going to be shit. As soon as you get that depth musician who just slots in seamlessly, the rest of the band just and can get on with business. I know a fair few musicians who are like this, and we use them regularly. And sometimes they'll even go sort of above and beyond and just pull out these special little moments that just make you smile, make you laugh. And when you get that kind of chemistry with a depth musician, it's worth its weight in gold, and you know that you've found a really cracking depth. So I hope this has been of some help and some import. If not, oh well, tough shit, isn't it really? It's too late now, you've watched it. Anyway, thanks very much everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Like and subscribe if you wish. All the best.